Okay, so now we talk about the need for entrepreneurship. Definitely. But if you don't have everything I just talked about before, if you don't have rules that protect intellectual property, you cannot have a thriving entrepreneurial development. Because what drives entrepreneurial is the intellectual capital. And it breaks my heart sometimes when I look at it, because our governments, African governments, we put in so much investment into our students. We put in so much investment either socially, economically, or morally, or financially, in all aspects. But yet, the resultant of all this resource and effort, we do not use them. We do not know how to actually put them to the best use. Now, at this point in time, I will for the first time, because I'm supposed to make a statement or do a presentation in Nigeria next month, but I will say something right now, which I probably will say there, which would be a very controversial thing. So let me put it this way, because I'm going to talk about that in the next 2 points. And with due respect to every one of you here, I want you to please think about it. And if you have any influence whatsoever on our educational system, take it back home and tell your commissioner of education, minister of education, or whatever it may be. Julius, me, I'm saying if I were in their position today, no student out of any African university will graduate unless they contribute to the solutions of multiple problems that Africa is having today. So are you getting the point? Okay? So you cannot graduate people. You cannot have all this enormous amount of resource, collective intelligence that you are breeding. You spend effort on them. You spend money on them. You put all the effort on them. But yet, when they come out working like, basically a walking book that doesn't know anywhere to go. A rolling stone that doesn't gather math cannot do anything. So when they get out to the public, they cannot relate to the problem. But if you make them contribute to the problem you are having, you are now solving your problem, you are growing your economy, you are creating intellectual property, you are creating entrepreneurial development that will help your GDP to grow. So we need to rethink our education, which is my bottom line. Education we do today cannot continue to favor us, because going to school, memorizing, coming out is not a license to function anymore. We are in an information technology world. We have to look for practical solutions. Okay, time is short, so I will give you a model, okay, of how innovation unleashes the wealth of nations. In this case, I'm saying African prosperity. So how do you start innovation? Well, I just talked about education. So you have to have an internal research and development environment. We cannot innovate if we cannot support intellectual development. You need an environment that will nurture intellectual capacity. And then if you do that well enough, you will create breakthrough technologies. Now, if you go to, and I'd be more than happy to host any one of you at MIT Media Lab, one of the best places of innovation in the whole world. Okay, if you want to come, I'll be happy to show them to you. I've entertained ministers, I've showed them, I said, look, here is what happens here, and I want you to take it back as a thinking process. So you come out with technology breakthroughs. Now, when you do that, you come out with an enhanced current, either a product or social policy or economic policy that betters your people. And you go from there into improved socio-economic development. And then it becomes a circle. So that's your internal boundaries that you operate in. Okay? So these are the things I would like us to discuss further. So this model that I just showed you is equally applicable to government as well as private sector, as well as PPP environment. Okay? So, but that's not enough, because this is not going to create innovation. This is closed innovation, because closed innovation doesn't take you beyond your capability. It doesn't entertain collective collaboration. So what you need to do, then you branch out, you say, look, I'm not doing enough by myself. I want to find out what Emeka is doing. So I'm going to partner with Emeka to leverage the collective intelligence of the two of us, which is higher than the sum of the two of us. So we go from there, and then we come out with better technology breakthrough. We come out with new businesses and new markets and new products that we can leverage. We keep on going and on and on and on. Now you transcend your boundary, and that's how you create innovation. This model is where innovation comes from. That's what MITs and the Stanfords and America in general, or, all of Europe, this is the model they follow daily. Okay? So we have challenges, and I just mentioned a few of them because I want to make sure that we get to a point we can discuss more on the details. I won't read all of them to you. In terms of giving, obviously, you have to have access for people. User interfaces that works, and, low-cost, scalable technology that we can rely on. Consumer protection, a market catalyst, all of those things. So, we can talk more about that. Now, this I put in here, I was a little hesitant to put it in, but I wanted to make sure that the network, issues are addressed. These are some of the solutions where we can come up with what I call the voice-to-text to transaction. We already did most of the voice-to-text, but voice-to-text to transaction is what takes you to actually the financial transaction side. So let me open it up for questions and answers, and I hope I gave you a little different opinion or different things to chew on from the rest of us.
All right, Julius, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the point where we're going to open up the floor for your comments and questions. Do go straight to the point. If you do have experiences that you feel are relevant, you'd like to share, feel free to do that. But before we open up the floor, just a few, one or two questions from me, and I'll throw this to you, Julius. So first of all, let me say that my little quip about Nigeria and Nigerians was actually meant in a very positive way.
Oh, that's okay.
I think everyone here appreciates and recognizes the contribution that they make to the continent. And I'll tell you this, the very first time that I was presenting television news for the BBC, a colleague presenter told me to walk in there, be confident, tell them what you want, tell them what kind of makeup you want, and present the program. So I did exactly that. Immediately the program was over and it was successful. The floor manager came to me and asked me, "Excuse me, are you a Nigerian?" And simply because of the confidence with which they expressed. But moving right along, you listed quite a few fascinating points about the challenges that African innovators and entrepreneurs face. But I want to go straight to the jugular and perhaps be a bit controversial. There is a well-known joke that floats around certain circles, and the joke goes, it's not really a joke really, that if you think about natural disasters, America has hurricanes, Asia has typhoons and tsunamis, Africa has governments. And perhaps, Ida, next time you're having this kind of conversation, the topic should be reforming African governments to unleash innovation in Africa. Perhaps that should be the subject.
I would agree with you.
It is the elephant in the room that we really have not yet nailed down. And perhaps will be a subject some of you may want to raise at some point. But again, a little round robin before we go to the floor. Ida, is that completely out of place?
I don't know. I will...
Be diplomatic.
I work for the UN.
Okay.
and the governments are my masters. But yeah, from a professional perspective, I think that it's very true. A lot of government officials don't understand this concept as well as they should. And I think that this is our challenge, and this is something that we need to work on. But I'm fascinated, and I would love to hear from representatives here from the member states, because ultimately they are the ones that will make the difference. We can only offer suggestions. So I'm dying to hear from them in terms of what they think of this idea.
Emeka, please go straight to the point for me. You can afford to be blunt.
Well, I think we should hold up a mirror to ourselves as a whole, because the governments represent us. They're populated by people who went to school with us. They're our brothers, our sisters. So I hesitate to point fingers, because the culture production I was referring to isn't the person who's just leading, it's the population. If you have people who go into government who don't have a grasp of what it takes to encourage innovation, it's not going to make a difference. The challenge we face is as much governments as the population. Because if you have a population that understands that if they have, for example, and I'll be specific to Nigeria, for example, the area I was referring to in Nigeria called Nnewi, where for, I would say, since the end of the Nigerian Civil War, you've got what you could consider a nascent light manufacturing sort of nucleus. It's been there ever since. To what extent have non-governmental types added their support to what is happening there? And if they haven't, when they enter government, it doesn't make a difference. So as much as it's easy to point at one group or the other, I think we should point the group at everyone. Because if we do, then we recognize it's not one person's or one group's or one institution's problem. It's something that all of us need to contend with. And if that happens, if we progressively understand that the young man or young woman, such as a person that I came across in 2006 in Malawi, who happened to have built a windmill on his own in rural Malawi without any of the pedigree or education of someone who went to an august institution, is as significant as the individual who lives in Lagos or Paris or elsewhere. If the people next door don't recognize it, it's not the government's fault. It's the fault of all of us. So I think we need to have a sea change as a whole. We need to learn from everyone and think that most of us have something to contribute to the conversation. And I think as we do that, more individuals, be them in government or not in government, will begin to understand that innovation is something that has to come from everywhere.
Professor Amina.
Thank you. I fully subscribe to what Emeka has said. But I think if you look at the history of the countries on the continent, we find that many of us have had, if I may say, post-independence of less than 50 years. And unfortunately, we still can't shed the shackles of colonialism. That's a very important notion to put on the table, because what Emeka has said in terms of us valuing each other, we're still looking north for answers. We never look south, we never look on the east, on the west, or horizontally, that is, our neighbors, we always look north. And if we look at the area that I have been working on, as I've presented in one of my slides, there has not been to date, unless, of course, people can correct me here, official recognition of an African pharmacopoeia. I mean, how can we add value to something? First of all, Africa has got a challenge in that this information has been transmitted orally. Asia has documented it. We haven't got this culture of documenting. So until we start documenting, until we start recognizing our own traditional healers, until we start putting orders in our own house, I think we are still a long way away, unfortunately. I don't know what people feel about it, but I think we need to start valuing ourselves, speak to ourselves, value our own people. And as the Maker has said, then our next door neighbor will recognize what we're doing.
I suppose in some ways that's precisely the point of this whole event that we are marking, not just today, tomorrow evening, and acknowledging the contribution of innovators in Africa.